Hey there, and welcome to the Event Crushed podcast. Each week, we'll be chatting about all things wedding industry, entrepreneurship, and how to crush it in life and business. I'm so glad you're here. Now, let's dive into this week's episode. Hello, and welcome back to the Event Crushed podcast. This is your host, Becky, and if you are new to the show and you're not familiar with me, I am a wedding planner and a mentor and educator for wedding planners, and I am also your business cheerleader behind the mic. So I love sharing advice and encouragement and ideas and inspiration for wedding professionals, and I oftentimes have guests on the show to share in their area of expertise. But today's episode is going to be a solo episode, and we are getting into a topic that has been on my heart and in my mind quite a bit lately. And that is this idea that there is so much value in the different seasons and stages of business, and that one is no better than the other. It's just different. And there is something to learn and to take away from every season. So whether you are brand new to the industry or you've been in it for a decade, this episode is your reminder that there is value where you are at right now. So first up, we're going to talk about what my business coach, Candace, calls new girl energy. I don't know if this is a term that she came up with or where she got it from, but I've heard her talk about this a few different times now. And it's basically like that scrappy, fired up motivation that shows up in the early days of business. And then, of course, we're also going to talk about the confidence and wisdom that comes with experience that you can really only gain from being in the industry and being a business owner for several years. Both of these are powerful and both have their place. And today I really want to celebrate what each one brings to the table. So let's get right into it. So first up, we are going to talk about what I mentioned as that new girl energy. There are so many benefits to being new in the industry, to being a new business owner. And I know that you might not think that because the way that it's portrayed, it seems like new businesses get a bad rep. It seems like they are often looked down upon, or there's just, various reasons that people might not look at a new business owner and say, hey, it's a good thing to be new, or you have this strength because you are new. So that's why I really wanted to call it out and recognize it, because obviously we've all been there. We've all been a new business owner at one point or another. And so there is so much that we learn in those early years. And there's several things I wanted to just call out as being a benefit of being in those early years of business. So the first one is just the hustle and motivation that newer business owners have. Newbies are, like I mentioned, scrappy and they're willing to say yes, and they're willing to try new things, and they're willing to do what it takes to figure it out, because that's what so much of being a business owner in the early days is figuring it out and trying different things and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work, and pivoting and adjusting. And there's a lot of that in the beginning. And that's hard. It's a hard season because you are really just putting things out there and saying, okay, is this working? No. Okay, let's try something different. Okay, is this working? Yes. Okay, great. Let's do more of that. But it's not easy. And I think that as a new business owner, you have so much motivation to just kind of keep going and make things work, because obviously you don't want to give up. You want to figure it out. And so you're willing to do whatever it takes to just make it happen. So that's number one. The second one is bringing a fresh perspective to the table. Newer wedding industry pros, they're not jaded by industry norms, which means that they are, might have more creativity and innovation and willing to try different things, unique things that we're not seeing all the time. And I think when someone comes into the industry with a fresh perspective like that, whether they're a younger person or older, age doesn't really matter. I think that they just have a fresh set of eyes and a new perspective that puts them in a really good spot. Because, for example, if you are a wedding pro that works at the same venue all the time and you see it kind of set up the same way over and over again, you kind of become jaded to that. And you're like, okay, yeah, that's just how this venue is. And you might not think about ways to make it unique or what you can do differently in that space. But if a new wedding pro comes in, a planner or designer, let's say, and they're seeing this venue for the first time and it's their first wedding there, like they're not comparing it to all the ways they've seen it done before. And they're able to just be more creative and think about, how they can use the space. They don't have anything to compare it to. And I think that that's a fun place to be in when you haven't seen it done a million times. And I think just in general, over time, after doing wedding after wedding after wedding, like wedding pros can become just generally a bit jaded. Like the really meaningful emotional moments of the day, like after you've seen it so many times, it might start to wear off a little bit. Like maybe it doesn't have that same magic that it did in the beginning. And so when you come in and you're just getting started, like everything is magical and every moment is so special. That's just a really great place to be in. Okay, and then number 3 is a fast learning curve. Everything is new when you're just getting started. So there is just so much potential for growth in a short time. And every wedding that you do, you're learning so much, whether you're photographing the wedding or doing flowers for the wedding or baking a cake for the wedding. Like you learn so much from every single wedding. I still, to this day, learn so much from every single wedding and take things away from it. But when you're just getting started, like you have that motivation and you have that fresh perspective. So you're taking everything you're learning and you are applying it to the next one and how you can make it even better. And the 4th one I wanted to mention is building momentum, because there's nothing like that first booking high or the feeling of hitting a milestone early on. Like you are just so ready to celebrate everything. And, your first wedding season, like booking out your first wedding season, it's so exciting. Or maybe doing your first styled shoot or your first corporate event or whatever it is. Like you are excited and ready to celebrate all those milestones along the way. And that just helps to build momentum for you moving forward because it's just such an exciting time. And the last one I want to include here is just the willingness to show up. I think when you are newer and getting started, wedding pros just tend to be more active in networking and in social media and saying yes to opportunities because they're trying to get their business name out there. And that's one of the best ways to do it is by showing up in person and online and making yourself known and making a presence for yourself. And I think that's a huge advantage for newer wedding pros, because for some of the seasoned pros that have been around for a long time, it's like, okay, yeah, we've done all that. And so they might not have that, again, that motivation that a newer wedding pro has. So I think that's definitely an advantage. I want to give a few just like pieces of encouragement to any of the newer wedding professionals who might be listening. The first one is that you do not have to have it all figured out. Progress beats perfection. You learn by doing and not by waiting until you're ready. So if you have made the step to start your business and to go for it, you are already 500 steps ahead of the person who is still sitting there thinking, oh, this is a good idea, I should do it, but I'm too scared. The fact that you went for it and faced your fears and started your business is amazing. And there are going to be lots of ups and downs. There's going to be tough seasons in any industry, in any business, like there just is. There's no way around that. But the important thing is to learn from every experience that happens and to see how you can use that in your next experience, your next event. And it's okay to try different systems, to try different marketing tools, to try different social media platforms. Like it's going to take time to figure out what works for you. And until then, until you know and you have a clear answer on that, just keep putting yourself out there. The next encouragement that I would like to share with you, this is definitely something that I struggled with early on in my business, and that is to try not to compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 5 or chapter 10. I know it sounds cliche, but it's so true. And it's a really fast way to burn out, is to constantly measure your progress against someone who's been doing this for years longer than you have. And I also want to add, not to compare yourself to someone who's in a totally different season or a totally different life stage than you. I have my own personal experiences with this too. If you're a mom and you have young kiddos at home, your business might not grow as quickly as someone who is living on their own and has all of their time to devote, and all of their energy to devote to their business. So different seasons of life are a huge part of this too. And so just try. I know it's hard, but try not to compare yourself with others. At all. It's impossible not to, but especially with those who are either in different seasons or in different stages, who've had their business for a lot longer than yours. And my last piece of advice and encouragement for those who are newer in the industry is to find your people early on. This industry, the wedding industry, is not a super easy industry to be a part of. There is so much that goes into someone's wedding day in terms of emotion, and it's a lot mentally and physically, and also just running a business. Aside from the actual wedding day and client work, like, there is the running of the business that is a lot, especially in today's day and age where we are marketing ourselves online and expected to show up at every networking event and just be a constant presence. It is a lot. And so it is so important to find your community, because you are going to need it. You're going to need people in your corner who understand. And it's one thing to have friends and family who are supportive. That's amazing. But you need people in the industry who understand what it is like day in and day out to be a wedding videographer or a wedding stationery designer. Our jobs are so unique. And so we need to have that support of others who are, have walked in our shoes and understand it. So if you are in your first 1 to 3 years of business, think of this as your superpower rather than something that is going to hold you back, because you're not weighed down by the how it's always been done. You are in your experimenting era and you should just lean into it. You bring something to the table right now. You don't have to wait until you're 5 to be valuable. You are allowed to take up space in this industry exactly as you are. Okay, so now we are going to move on to those who are more seasoned wedding pros. So this could be anyone, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and beyond. So there's definitely strengths that come with time of being a wedding business owner. The first one that I want to call out would be confidence. Being in the industry for many years, you trust your gut more and you don't sweat every little decision like we might have done in the earlier years. You also might be willing to get out of your comfort zone more and take opportunities that maybe you were a little bit fearful to do in the beginning. And now that you have experienced so many events and so many weddings, you are more confident in trying new things. The second one is systems and boundaries. Of course, having years of experience has shaped your workflows and client journey. And so you've probably figured out a really solid system for running your business, for communicating and managing your clients, for marketing, for all of that. Whereas in the early years, like I said, it takes a lot of experimenting. It takes time to figure that out. But by year 5, 7, 10, you probably have it pretty dialed in. The third strength that I want to mention for those who are more seasoned is industry connections. If you've been in the industry for this long, you have built a reputation, which opens doors, and it also leads to referrals and strong referrals that you have been able to maintain year after year because you have been in it. And you have worked at certain venues so many times, and you've worked with certain vendors so many times, and you have those strong relationships. And number 4 is problem solving, because you've seen it all and you can handle wedding day curveballs calmly. you've been through all kinds of crazy things on a wedding day. If you've been in business for 5 or more years, you have seen some stuff. Am I right? Like you have seen all kinds of crazy things. And because of that, you know that whatever future craziness comes your way, like you will be able to handle it calmly and with grace. Whereas someone who is newer in the industry, sometimes it's a little harder to remain calm and collected in those moments. And that can just come with years of experience. And the last one is clarity in direction, which I think is really important to mention because, as I mentioned in the early years, we are trying different things, we're figuring things out. But if you've been in the industry for 5-10 years, you have had the time to find your ideal clients, to find the people that you like to work with and that you mesh really well with. And you've also found the kind of events that you like to do. Maybe you over time added in corporate events or social events or another type of event to the mix because you tried some out and you realized that you loved that. Or maybe you pivoted away from weddings entirely and focused on a different type of events altogether. You just have that clarity and you're able to niche down, refine your offers, and also charge appropriately. That's definitely something that comes with time as well. And I know for, newer pros, like that's one of the biggest struggles is figuring out pricing and not pricing yourself too low that someone is not going to take you seriously, but not charging too high where it doesn't really make sense with your experience level. And so once you get to a certain point, you are able to, charge what you are needing to charge to make a living. And that makes sense for your experience level. And you just feel really great about it. Also, I mentioned, doing different types of events, but it can also be refining your services. So for example, maybe you used to offer a whole bunch of different options and services, but since you've been doing this for so many years, you've learned what really works well. For example, a photographer, maybe they used to offer like a small elopement package and then a 6-hour package and an 8-hour package and a 10-hour package. And they've learned that for them to really be able to capture the wedding day, they just, they really need to focus on that 10-hour package. So maybe they get rid of some of the smaller options. Or a planner who maybe they used to offer a bunch of options, but then they really realized their passion was full planning, which I can relate to that. And so they decided to remove those other offerings and just focus on full planning. So refining offers is another thing that comes with time and clarity of being a business owner for many years. And then I just want to share a few notes of encouragement for seasoned wedding pros. One thing that I would encourage you to do is just to go back to your roots and remember why you started your business in the first place. To be able to, reignite your why. What did you love about this work when you started? And how can you bring that spark back? Like if you have been feeling burnt out or you have been struggling, which many of us have, how can you go back to those early days and reignite your why? I remember a couple of years ago, I found this journal that I kept when I was just getting started with my business. And I read this journal entry. I'll have to pull it out again. I don't know where it is at the moment, but reading through it was so cool because it was just kind of talking about my excitement for starting my business and how like I couldn't believe it was really happening after all of this planning and preparation and time I was doing it. And I was so excited. And it was just such a good reminder for me of why I started in the first place. And so I think if you have a way to kind of go back to those early days and remind yourself of your passion and why you started, that can be so helpful. And I mentioned refinement or like refining offers a minute ago, but refinement is such an important part of growing as a business owner. So it's kind of the opposite of in the early days, you're doing more, you're trying new things, more. But in the later seasons of being a business owner, it's not about doing more, it's about doing less, but better, basically. So refining your services, finding that niche and raising your rate so that you can take on less weddings. So improving the quality of your work for your clients, being able to charge more, but having less number of events, I think, is something that I'm not going to say everybody should strive for, because there are definitely high volume companies out there who have a big team and they can take a really large amount of weddings and events each year. But if you are a more boutique company where it's just you, or maybe you have a small team, I think it is a reasonable goal to want to do less weddings and events over time, but to have a higher price point and have, higher quality. And so refining your offers and really honing in on your specialty is one way to do that. And the third thing I want to encourage you to do is to think about mentoring somebody. If you've been in the industry, again, 5, 10 plus years, like, you are a seasoned expert and you do have something to offer to newer wedding professionals. And there are people out there who just are looking for help, a helping hand to get started. Because again, this can be a really intimidating industry to step into. I remember feeling extremely intimidated when I started my business in 2012. And if it wasn't for like those first few relationships and friendships that I built, it would have been really hard, because I would have been, scared to show up at networking events. And I would have never had the confidence to start my networking event that I started pretty early on in my career. So I think it's so important to consider giving back and finding someone to mentor and to kind of show the ropes, because I know a lot of us, myself included, we were given that back when we were getting started. Most of us had somebody who was willing to give us a leg up and help us and show us, what we needed to know to get started. And so I think it's kind of a no-brainer. If you can give that back to somebody, I highly, highly recommend it. And it might even remind you of why you started in the first place. And seeing someone else's excitement and their passion could kind of reignite your own as well. So if you are in this stage of being a more seasoned wedding professional, don't underestimate how valuable your steadiness is to your couples, to other vendors, and to the industry as a whole. You have done the work, you know your stuff, and you don't have to prove anything, but you can still be excited about what's next. All right, so the last little bit here, I just want to talk a little bit about how these two stages can coexist. So I already mentioned the mentorship idea. So pairing up, somebody who is a newer wedding pro pairing up with somebody who's a seasoned wedding pro. It goes both ways. Like I mentioned, obviously a newer pro can learn from a seasoned pro, but a seasoned pro can also be so inspired by that fresh energy of somebody who is newer to the industry. Also, I would really encourage you to just stay open to growth at every level. You can be 10 years in and still learning, growing, and trying new things. The key is to be continually working on yourself and your business. To me, this is one of the coolest parts about being a human, is that we are never done improving. And we don't have to settle for where we're at right now. There is unlimited potential for improvement and growth at every stage. And we don't need to just be like, okay, well, I guess this is just what it is, so I'll just stay here. Like, no, there are so many opportunities for growth. There's so much education online now, obviously free podcasts. There's so many opportunities to learn and grow in your craft, whatever that is. And I would just encourage you to just keep doing it. Like, the worst thing is to get to the point where you're like, all right, that's it. I've made it. I am as good as I'm going to get. And that's it from here. Like, I don't ever want that. I want to be constantly reaching for that next level and learning and growing. And I just think that's such a super cool part about being a human, is that we're never finished. All right. And I know I mentioned this before, but I want to just quickly touch on it again, just the idea of avoiding comparison. So instead of thinking, oh, I should be further along by now, just ask yourself, what is this season offering me? What am I learning in this current stage, in this current season? We all have things in our lives that, affect our work and, personal stuff that maybe means like we can't take on the number of weddings that we want to in a year. But then we see someone else who's doing that, and it's hard. But I encourage you to just cut out the noise. I'm not saying you need to go unfollow everybody who's like a quote unquote competitor. I really don't like that term. But however you can focus on you and stay in your own lane without getting distracted by what everybody else is doing, I do think that that is important. And so whatever that looks like for you, you should do it. All right. So no matter where you are, if you're in that new girl chapter or if you are in the seasoned stage of business, there is value, power, and purpose right there. I would love to know where you are at in your business journey. So shoot me a DM at eventcrush.ed on Instagram and let me know where you're at and how you're feeling. And if you are, loving this stage that you're in, or if you are excited for a future stage, like if you're a newer wedding pro who's longing to be a seasoned vet, don't worry, you'll get there. It'll happen before you know it. Pretty soon you'll be looking back and going, wow, I've been in business for 13 years. That's pretty wild. But I'd love to hear from you. I love hearing from podcast listeners and just talking with you over on Instagram or an email. You can email me at becky@eventcrush.com. And I would love it if you would consider leaving a review on Apple or Spotify if you haven't already. And otherwise, we will see you back here next week. I hope you have a fantastic week. If you have a wedding this weekend, I hope it goes amazingly. And as always, thanks so much for being here, and we will catch you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Event Crushed podcast. I hope you found value in this episode, and if you did, please consider sharing it with a wedding industry friend. We also hope you'll consider leaving a rating or review for the show to help other listeners find it. This podcast is edited and produced by Ace Sound Design. If you're looking to elevate your audio experience, their info can be found in the show description. As always, thank you for listening, and please connect with us on Instagram if you haven't already. Now get out there and crush it.